Welcome back, everybody, to Pikmin. We're midway down the sub-level 2. We're digging up a treasure, and then I believe it should be it for this level. Well, not only this level, but I believe it should be it for... Yeah, I'm sorry, just this level. I'm sorry, I'm blanking for some reason as to how many more things I have to do. Obviously, I'm only at level 2 of this dungeon, so no possible way that I'm done with this on the next level. I was not a big fan of. I don't think it was the previous dungeon, but I think it was 2 dungeons before, where. No, it was last dungeon, wasn't it? Where there was an enemy, this fucking steamroller enemy. You can't defeat him until you get down to level 5. But if you waste any longer than 5 minutes, which is going to take you close to 5 minutes to do these, to find, particularly the first time, find your treasures, retrieve them, bring them back to your ship, and then escape. It's going to take you about 5 minutes to do that. Unless you're Pikmin player supreme ordinaire or whatever. So I a while back I had bought some low quality chimichanga freezer grocery store BS, okay? I remember thinking to myself, this doesn't really taste all that good. So I stopped buying it for maybe about a year. But I just bought myself another 12-pack because I couldn't find like regular burritos in the frozen food area. And I talked about this in a previous episode. I've long since forgotten, but this is like barely food. I mean, it's got the whatever you want to call it, fried flour tortilla shell, but the inside of it is like what I can only describe as like newspaper pulp. I mean, I know there are beans in there because it's supposed to be a bean type enchilada, but it's like a paste more than it's like beans, you know? I don't know. I suppose if I had a bean burrito, if I'd ordered a bean burrito, this would be a pretty good frozen food substitute for it. But there's barely any like substance to it, like actual beanage inside. And a lot of times when I'm eating it, there's not really any flavor to it, not even like you're eating beans, just like, newspaper. It'll fill me up for a while anyways. I don't know. I shouldn't ask a lot. I shouldn't be asking for this food to be doing all that much for me, considering A, it was in the frozen food section. B, I got a dozen of them, and it probably cost me less than $10. What do you expect? One nice thing about these are like the perfect after work meal for me. Because typically if I go to lunch and I have a big lunch, I don't want to eat a regular or big sized dinner. Oh, there goes some purple Pikmin, fortunately. So this little thing, which is like kind of like a half a burrito size, is like the perfect amount of food. It'll fill my stomach, and I won't be hungry later. At the same time, like, I won't be stuffed either. So in fun news, I guess, I should put this. I've been, in the last couple up, maybe about 5 or 6 episodes ago, I was complaining that I've been drinking gasoline recently. And by gasoline, I don't mean like literal gasoline, but like I bought old granddad bourbon. That shit burns and stink. Well, it doesn't stink, it just burns my esophagus every time I drink it. Whereas like normal bourbon, I'll drink like the initial first sip will be kind of like, ooh, that's a little bit of a burn there. No, old granddad burns every time, all the time, and it burns a lot. And that's why I said it's like drinking gasoline or kerosene or something. It's like it's beyond like drinkable alcohol, and it should be technically classified as a poison. So I'm sure if you look at any alcohol, whether that be just a light beer to like a hard lemonade, you could definitely count anything alcoholic related as being like a light poison. But I've been mixing the old granddad in with cream soda, so I'm able to like put like say 3 ounces of the 3 or 4 ounces of the old granddad in with the 8-ounce can of cream soda to cut the cut everything, like cut. It obviously doesn't make cream soda taste better, it makes it taste worse, but I'm able to drink it without feeling like my esophagus is going to shrivel up and die. Plus, it's easier to sip than straight 100 proof bourbon. Not a bad liquor. I'll give it that. It's just it's very strong in everything that it does. It's got a very strong burn to it. It's got a very strong vanilla taste to it. You know, it's not overwhelmingly that. You know, it's not like trying to drink try to sip a bottle of, you know, whatever you call that, pure vanilla, but it's there. It's like at that level. Alright, so I love how they combine this guy here who shoots fire out of his nose with this guy over here that shoots water out of his nose. So, like, you don't want your Pikmin to get lit on fire, and you don't want them to drown either, because you've got opposing elements here. So that's what we'll do. We're just gonna overwhelm this guy. He's gonna get beat up, and yeah, that'll be it. We'll kill this big bag of air and go from there. There we go. Got some blue Pikmins. We need to take this wall down. We need to kill this big bag of air. And then we need to ask ourselves the important questions like, am I really going to do what I plan to do tomorrow? So, I'm so far ahead in these episodes right now. Basically, I'm the week before Memorial Day, and my parents have gone away on a trip, so they will not be around for Memorial Day. And I've been pondering all of this past week, or part of this week anyways. Do I do what my parents would normally do if they weren't on a 2-week vacation, and go to the flower place and pick up flowers and go to all the graves and plant flowers. And in a way, I feel like as the next in line, per se, in the family to do that, I have to do it. But on the other hand, I feel like I don't have to do that, because for the most part, my direct relatives, my grandmother and grandfather's graves on both sides are already being decorated by my other aunts and cousins. And oh, fuck you. That's like every time you see a dead end like that, it's like, oh, you gotta double check it because there's probably gonna drop a bomb guy down there when you're not looking. Thanks. But here's part of my story. Despite being despite no child ever wanting to go to a graveyard, or I didn't ever want to go to the graveyard because best case scenario, I was bored out of my mind. Worst case scenario was like, this is where dead people exist now that they're dead. And I've never really been able to, from a very small age, kind of accept the fact that I'm going to die one day. And I've talked about it a number of times. Talking about it kind of makes me feel better, but I realize that me talking about it's probably making someone else super anxious, because they probably have the same fear as me, and me talking about this is probably setting off every panic receptor in their brain. But to the point, I diverted from my point. My point here is not the fact that I'm afraid to go to graveyards, or, you know, it's a matter of honoring your deceased relatives, okay? And because I've spent too much time in graveyards, longer than any child raised. Every fucking, we would go to the graveyards when I was a child, from about as far back as I can remember. Because what would end up happening is my mom would work weekend, okay? Because she worked in a hospital. So on weekends, my mom would be at work usually, either afternoon shift, which started at 2, or she was working morning shift, which started at 5 a.m. In either case, I'm headed over to my grandmother's house, particularly around this time of the year, i.e. Memorial Day, and we would go and we would spend time in the graveyard as my grandparents and my dad would be planting flowers at all of his aunts and uncles' graves, because this is going to get a little bit probably deeper than anyone cares to know, but when my dad was the youngest of his cousins, okay, not just his brothers and sisters, he was the youngest of all of his cousins, okay. So when he and my mother got married, that was I wouldn't say the last hurrah, but that was the last major gathering of my dad's side of the family. Both his mother and his father's side, you know, maybe not necessarily my grandfather's side, but definitely my grandmother's side. She was the youngest of all the siblings. My dad was the youngest of all the cousins. And so shortly after my dad got married, like, they all started to pass away. Not any specific reason other than they were, like I said, much older than my grandmother was. So, you know, my dad's wedding was the last major gathering. And I'm not going to say of all of my grandmother's brothers and sisters, because even prior to my dad and mom getting married, some of his uncles had passed away. You know, it is what it is. You know, you're gonna have certain people that are gonna they're either not gonna take good care of themselves, or other factors are going to prevent them necessarily from living a long life. Okay. So by the time not only by the time I'm born, but the time I'm conscious, i.e. like 4 or 5 years old, like everybody except for maybe one or two of my grandmother's siblings were dead. And they had she had like 7 brothers and sisters. So when I say 7, I mean that's a lot. I mean, my dad's uncle Andy was around into about 94-ish, but he was the next to last to go. And then my grandmother lived another, I want to say 20 years. It's probably less than 20 years. I kind of forget when she passed away, what year she passed away, because it all became sort of a blur to me. Anyway, point. When you've got your grandmother who's still alive, and your father who's going to the graveyards, and again, my grandmother's the last of her brothers and sisters at this point. We got 7 graves we gotta go decorate. Some of which are not all of which are in the same graveyard either. So you might travel up to this graveyard, and then there's another graveyard shortly, beyond that, like maybe within a mile, there's another graveyard. And then after you've decorated those, you've done those 2 graveyards, you gotta go clear across the fucking, I wouldn't say county, clear across the town. There's a graveyard on the complete opposite end of town that has all of the other people, including my grandfather's brothers and sisters. Now, most of my grandfather's brothers were still alive in the 90s. I think he had 4 brothers, or maybe 5 brothers, and only one of them had passed away before 1990. They mostly passed away starting in about 2000-ish. But in order to get to the point of my story, I know where all the graves are. If you asked me to write physical directions to my grandfather, to my aunts, my great aunts and great uncles' gravestones, I could not do it. I could give you, if I looked at a map, I could tell you how to get to the graveyards. I could not physically tell you where they're at, but I know exactly where they are just by sight alone. I could walk the graveyards and know exactly where to find those headstones. Because there's certain markers that make it easier in certain graveyards, and there's other markers that make it a little bit harder to find them in other graveyards, but I've got a rough idea where they're all at. In so much that, like, if I were to go to Graveyard A, okay, which is probably, we'll just say is the smallest of the 3 graveyards that I'd have to visit, it would not take me very long to find my mom's grandparents, my dad's, at least 1 or 2 of my dad's uncles, and aunt and uncle, and I think my great-grandfather on my grandmother's side is up there. Then you go roughly across the street, but it's about a mile away, going across a major roadway, and I could hit the other graveyard, which wouldn't take very long, and that has a number of my mom's aunts and uncles as well. It has some of her relatives, I think. I can't remember exactly who's all over there, but I know some of my dad's aunts and uncles are buried over there. Okay, and then the other cemetery, which is the big one, that cemetery is not nearly full. It will not be full for probably at least another 100 or 200 years, because they've just got so much space to bury people in that, like I said, even if you were to bury people for 100 years in that town, you should probably, and only in that graveyard, you should probably not fill it up. But here's my point. I can tell you exactly where all of my grandparents' graves are. I can tell you exactly where all of my great-grandparents' graves are. Wow. Yeah. Because okay, so, again, getting a little too deep into Christopher history, family lore, whatever you want. my great-grandfather bought the plot where all of his kids are buried. It was a big plot, obviously, but him, his wife, and all of his kids can and are buried there. Okay? And so, because they're all buried together, my great-grandfather, my grandfather, and all of his brothers and sisters are buried there. So, that's an easy one. On my mom's side, they're all split up, but I know exactly where my mom's, I know where my dad's other grandfather is. So my other set of great-grandparents on my dad's side. I know where they're at. They're in that cemetery I mentioned. They're also buried not far away from my mom's grandparents on her dad's side. And then the last one, let me do this correctly. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, and the last one is buried near my mom's parents. So between 3 cemeteries, between 2 cemeteries, let's see, between 3 cemeteries, I can hit all of my grandparents, great-grandparents, and most of my dad's aunts and uncles. Now, I say that because I never really figured out the nature of my mom's aunts and uncles because my mom's dad had lots of brothers and sisters, but my grandmother only had 3 or 4 sisters, okay? They were the sisters, the 4 sisters. I'm not going to give away their names, but, and as they grew older, they moved out of the hometown, per se. So it's much more difficult to find them because whereas my grandfather and my great-grandfather and other great-grandfathers and grandmothers are all buried within roughly the same town. When my mom's aunts and uncles started to move all over the place, and when I mean all over the place, I don't mean like one moved to California, one moved to Oklahoma, one's up in Maine, and the other one's in Pennsylvania. I mean like one moved to Ohio, and then another one moved like in center PA. And then the other one sort of stayed more local. And of course my grandparents lived where they lived. So yeah. It's that's not like in a way I kind of feel proud that I know where all my grandparents are, my grandparents are buried. But that is not a skill that I said to myself, boy, would I like to know where they were buried. No, it was sort of like, hey, we're going to go to the graveyards again for the 7th time in the 7 years that you've been conscious. So yeah, of course you remember where these graves are after that many times, let alone doing it another decade's worth of times. The irony, of course, and I hate to say this, I really do. It makes me want to throw up when I think of this, and the older I get, the more I have in common with the people that are underground than the people that are above ground. And that really irritates me to no end, because I've got much life to live. I've got much more people to meet and much more people to interact with. But I never met my great-grandparents, first and foremostly, but I knew all 4 of my grandparents for many, many years. Like, I was 20 years old when my grandfather passed away. He was the first of the 4, okay? And then my grandmother on my father's mother passed away next, and that was about a decade later. And then my grandmother on my mom's side passed away, and then my grandfather passed away about 2 years after that. He was 97, so we're not going to berate my 97-year-old grandfather. He lived a very full and very productive and very healthy life prior to him passing. but I don't know. I know more. Okay, I'm being overly dramatic when I say I know more people that are under the earth than above the earth. That's not nearly true. But in some ways it I wouldn't say it rings true, because like I said, if I counted the number of people that I know that are passed away, I could probably count maybe 20 or 30 or 40 people. If we're talking not just about my grandparents, my aunts, my dad's aunts and uncles, which I never met these people, because by the time by the time I was conscious, they'd all passed except for my grandfather died, and then of course my mom's aunts and uncles were all still alive at that point. And then yeah, they got sick and they started to pass away, particularly on my grandfather's side. But that's not to say that like I knew them very well, but in namesake, I know of their graves. So you could, if you count all of those people, and then you count people that say I went to school with, or people that I went to church with that I know that have passed away that aren't, you could probably just even call them acquaintances, not even necessarily call them friends. I don't know, maybe 50 to 100 people I know that's dead. And if you count the number of people that I know that are alive, yeah, I probably know twice as many people. I could name easily the number of people I work with. That would be somewhere in the ballpark of 60 people right there, if you just count the people I know that have either currently working at the business I work at, or previously worked at the business that I worked at. And then also the people I've met in college, the people I met in high school, they're still alive. I mean, the number, if we really, again, this is one of those things that I talk about occasionally and that I've learned over the years, is it's very easy to look at bad things that have happened in your life and belly button stare about, oh, I know 50 people that are dead. But when you think about the people that you know that are still alive, it very much helps you to put in perspective that there is more going for you above ground than what's below ground. And again, we're near Memorial Day, so of course I'm thinking about this. I don't think about, my deceased grandparents in graveyards all the time. I just kind of think about them 2 or 3 times a year. And Memorial Day is one, maybe a little more than 3 times, but Memorial Day is 1, 4th of July is usually 2. Then when you start getting near the end of the year holidays, which I will lump together even though they are within months, they're within about a month and 2 weeks of each other. But Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's, those are the times I think about the people that have passed away and the people that are no longer in my life. And it makes me sad. I mean, it upsets me, but I really highly try to focus on the here and now as best I can. And one of my downsides is, like, I feel like I live in all times, all at the same time. That while I'm living I'm living this age, my, being an adult, I'm an adult, obviously. But as being an adult, I sometimes feel like I'm living the, I go to church with my dad every week. And sometimes I have the morbid thought that this is one of who knows how many more times I get to go to mass with my dad. And we go every week. We don't go occasionally. We don't go twice a year. We go every week. That's 52 times a year. 52 times a year. And there's sometimes where I look at my father and see him aging and think to myself, how many more of these do I have? And if I'm lucky, it'll be hundreds, thousands maybe. Because over the course of, 10 years would be, what would that be, 520 more church visits, roughly speaking, minus any weddings, funerals, baptisms, confirmations, first Holy Communions, etc. And I understand if my dad lives another 20 years, he'll be in his 90s. So yeah, 1,000 more church visits. Plus, I'll probably have a wife and kids and that sort of shit. So the likelihood of me attending Mass with him every week probably becomes less and less as I get more involved with my own life. But that's yet to be seen. I'm gonna do a little belly button look. I'm a bit of a loser right now. I don't have a wife. I don't have kids. I should have both in my 40s, but I don't. And so I'm gonna try to make that a priority, even if that means putting an end to this, what I'm doing right now. Yeah. This guy's fucking obnoxious. I get the idea of how to beat him. You gotta throw Pikmin on his tail to do big damage, and obviously he heals himself. And he seems to point at whoever's in charge. And I'm not very good at aiming my Pikmin, as you can also see. But like, this boss should have been dead like 3 minutes ago. Not like at a third of his health. Again, I know he's reviving his health slowly as the boss battle goes on, which extends the boss battle. The longer, obviously the longer it takes me to beat him, the more health he regains. So much so that he's almost back to a third of his health again. What should happen is I should be splitting him like this, and every time, yeah, there should be more Pikmin with Olimar and more Pikmin with the fucking boss. So every time he turns around, I'm shooting 10 or 20 Pikmin on his tail. He should be dead by now. Irritates the shit out of me that I'm doing just such a shitty job aiming at his tail. Part of which is because I'm not really seeing where the arc is, and I'm trying to put the thing where his tail shadow is, and it's not working. And I'm trying to do this. It's probably about the best I can do. Just get right up in his taint and just start throwing shit right up into his butthole. Alright, so we'll pick that up, we'll pick those up, pick up the other enemies. I'm gonna cut the episode after that, and we'll continue down to the next sub-level. And be done with this, I guess. Or we'll escape here. Whatever we need to do. Anyways, until next time, I hope all of you have a good day, and, I wish you all peace.